Are we ready, everybody? Christine, can you hear us? Okay at home? Good. I don't like that gavel. I'm just not a gavel
It's just a light one.
kind of chair. All right, I'd like to start. Director Morrison, is this on?
The gavel.
I know, I need a ding. I'd like to start by recognizing that the CVRD is on the unceded territories of the Cowichan, Malahat, Subasit, Halalt, Penelakut, Staminas, Liaxin, Pauquachin, Dididot, and Patchidot nations who have stewarded these lands for thousands of years, and I am very grateful to all of them. I'm going to call this meeting to order, the regular board meeting of Wednesday, March the 26th. Welcome, everyone. And I would like to take a moment to especially welcome Director Beeston, the brand new mayor of Ladysmith. Congratulations. This is her first time here at our table. Very happy to have her. I know that you're under, the fire hose of information of walking into local government, but what I'll just share is that here at this table, we all take off our hats of our own little areas that we have, and we look at what's best for the region as a whole. I want to also acknowledge that we have alternate directors Champ and Sandhu online. Welcome. And in terms of our time management, I just want to make a note that I have to leave at 3:45 to pick up my children. I can always come back and leave them with snacks in the director's lounge, but we'll see if that's an attainable end to our meeting. So moving to the approval of the agenda, there's a few things I need to note. We have the late edition of CR5S, and there will also be a verbal report of the chair and a verbal director's report by Director McClinton. Mr. Robbins, I got all the things? I did. Okay. So looking for a motion, moved, seconded, all those in favor of the agenda as amended? Thank you. That passes. Adoption of the minutes, regular board meeting of February 26th be adopted. Moved, seconded, all in favor, any opposed? Motion carries. And the minutes of the special board meeting of March 12th, 2025 be adopted. Moved, I should get in the habit, moved by Director Istash, seconded by Director Morrison. All those in favor, any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving forward into public input period. This is an opportunity for the public to come and provide us some input. We have 15 minutes with each speaker getting 3 minutes, excluding any items that have or are subject to a public hearing. Input from our community is very valued and appreciated, and we request that the input is presented in a friendly and respectful manner. Your cooperation in maintaining a safe and respectful environment is greatly appreciated. And Ms. Bernard, I think you're the only member of the public. I'll invite you. Okay. And Mr. Robbins, we don't have anyone online?
No one online.
Okay. Moving on to delegations, I'd like to welcome Ms. Lochner up to the podium. And great, Rebecca's going to help you with your presentation. So she's here to speak on behalf of the Youth Advisor and Cowichan Women's Health Collective. And feel free, please introduce everyone else that you have with you. Oh, I see, I do have multiple names.
Multiple names. Hi. Good afternoon, Chair Segal and CVRD board members. Thank you for having us today to talk with you about the findings from the Cowichan Youth Services gap analysis. There are 3 of us. We'll be speaking in order, and we will stick to the time as instructed. My name is Brenda Keeks. I was a member of the research team, which is what brings me here before you today. Every 4 years since 1992, the BC Adolescent Health Survey, also known as the McCreary Test, has been administered to youth in grades 7 to 12. Any of you who have kids would know about that survey that happens. The survey gives an evidence base of youth trends, emerging issues, and risk and protective factors for healthy development in our young people. The results of the survey are centrally tabulated and reported back to school districts for information and action. The 2024 survey results for the Cowichan Valley youth were quite alarming. 43% of the approximately 14,000 young people in this region reported that their mental health is poor or fair. Anxiety, substance use, suicidal ideation, isolation, and failing confidence were among the top issues reported within this population in our community. Acknowledging that these results were no doubt heightened by COVID, the results, together with the findings from the 2023 point of time count that identified 20 unhoused youth in this region, and the BC's coroner's report on adolescent deaths, led the social service sector to ask for a deeper exploration of what was happening. With the help of grants from our Cowichan Community Health Network and the Social Planning and Research Council of BC, a team was hired to design and deliver a focused study of the local situation, and a project advisory group comprised of sector experts and leaders was formed. Over 6 months, the Cowichan Valley Youth Services Gap Analysis included interviews with leaders of youth-serving government institutions, First Nations, and nonprofits in the health, education, police, and social service sectors. It engaged with young people across the region through schools, clubs, and community service programs. It engaged with parents through interviews, and it culminated in a facilitated workshop that brought the sector together to hear the research findings. The executive summary of the work will be circulated at the end of the presentation. The full report will be available soon at our Cowichan Community Health Network website. I'm now going to give the floor to Zoe Lochner. Among other things, most of you know that she is the Executive Director of the Cowichan Valley Youth Services, and she was an active member of our project advisory team. Zoe is going to present the key findings from the work, focused primarily on the issues that we believe are within the purview of the CVRD to support.
Just a second, Ms. Lochner. I'm just getting a...
Obligation period?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? All in favor? You have more time.
Wonderful, because we need tech support to advance our slides. Oh, no, we don't. They're here now. Thank you. Thank you so much, Brenda, and Hait Sepka, Chair Segal, and board directors for your time this afternoon. I'm grateful for the opportunity to highlight some of the key findings from the gap analysis. While we encourage CVRD directors to review the report in its entirety, today I'll be focusing specifically on areas where the regional district has a certain level of influence with which you can help to create lasting change. I want to acknowledge that we understand the financial stress and limitations that exist at all levels of government. And we understand that priorities are a matter of political choice, and youth are the future of this region. It's important to note that the following data was collected in segmented groups, including from youth, parents, and service providers specifically. Key findings from 4 youth consultation sessions include both gaps and needs expressed directly from youth in your communities and are as follows. Safety is a top-of-mind issue for young people. Youth want and need the responsible adults in their lives to be attentive to safety and to support safe places to hang out. Youth want to be able to walk alone and feel safe doing so. They want to feel protected, whether in schools, at home, or in community. Included in this sense of safety is having the basic necessities of life, such as food and housing, consistently provided to them. Youth had many recommendations and asks from their community. Those within the purview of the CVRD fall mainly into the realms of recreation and culture, transportation, and community safety. And these include safe, trauma-informed, and culturally attuned services, safe spaces, both outdoors and indoor spaces to hang out, more time with their workers, counselors, mentors, and teachers, access to culturally safe programming that incorporates culture and language, and programming that is specific to certain age groups. They want opportunities to develop a sense of belonging, and this can be achieved through having friends, getting a job, access to recreational activities, great teachers, and access to nature. Now, it's important to note here, and this is not a surprise to any of you, that many youth are unable to participate in organized sports due to the cost, which excludes them from activities where they could excel or create and develop that sense of belonging. They also want better transportation, citing not enough public transportation. Youth want free transit options and more buses on key routes and for special events. This is a particularly timely point as the existing transit strike continues to negatively impact youth and other vulnerable community members. Findings related to parents and caregivers in the region, gleaned from focus groups consisting of parents who had youth in the system, and perhaps, they're perhaps less within the CVRD's realm of influence, but are still vital to note. Parents often feel shunted to the side when youth are in crisis, despite being the first line of defense for youth, and most commonly are also youth's primary caregivers. The economic implications for parents of youth with disabilities and youth in crisis are immense, even if caregivers have good health benefits, but particularly so if not. Many parents with youth experiencing crisis are living at poverty levels or below. Parents and caregivers throughout the CVRD are asking for a single point of entry into the system when help is needed and support to navigate it. Support groups to provide education and reduce isolation. This could be added to the list of recreational program offerings in collaboration with youth-serving organizations. Earlier interventions for youth to reduce the risk of escalation, a reduction in wait lists, and an increase in preventative measures. 28 interviews were conducted with leaders in the sector, reaching 42 leaders and staff. Interviews focused on identifying current strengths and weaknesses of the sector overall and observations about the needs of clients. These findings include, while the Cowichan youth serving sector considers itself to be well connected, collaborations are expensive because relationships take time to build. This is made difficult due to high turnover in the sector, and collaboration requires capacity. Financial stresses on the nonprofit sector are significant, as you all know, increasing a perception of competition. We have seen the impact of these stressors this past year with the closing of Big Brothers Big Sisters Cowichan Valley, as well as Cowichan Family Life Association. Outlying communities feel less connected to services, and youth in these communities have high barriers to accessing services. COVID has also effectively changed the landscape of youth needs, with post-COVID period being characterized by youth who lost time developing vital social skills, are more reliant and dependent on screens and technology, lacking physical activity, and lacking a sense of safety. As Brenda mentioned, anxiety is at an all-time high at 43% of Cowichan youth. The economic crisis also puts additional stress on families with significant implications for youth. Housing and food insecurity have also become critical issues for these families. You've heard this before, but there are things that local governments can do to address the shortage of affordable housing, and we trust that you are doing all you can. These are but a few of the realities that youth, parents, caregivers, and service providers within your communities grapple with on a daily basis. A list of action items to address the identified gaps include the establishment of a youth table and youth advisory group, recruitment of a child and youth psychiatrist for the region, and a systematic approach to addressing gaps in parental supports, upstream interventions, and sector complexity. We stand before you today to ask you first and foremost to consider the needs of youth at every point in your decision-making. Youth are our future, and decisions that affect their lives in their communities should be made with them in mind. Nothing about us without us. With that, I'll turn the floor to Delphine Coyote, the youth advisor to the research team, who can share our specific requests to you, the CVRD board. Haitsepka.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Zoe and Brenda. My name is Delphine Coyote. As a member of the research team, I participated in many of the interviews, focus groups, and the workshop. During these sessions, I heard firsthand about many of our young people, how they are experiencing life in the Cowichan Valley. My role here today is to suggest how the CVRD can really help. First, community safety. Many young people do not feel safe walking to school or to and from their jobs. The drug crisis is making the community feel unsafe because there are many unpredictable people at all hours of the day and night. Racism, sexism, and misogyny are alive and well in the region, creating problems particularly for Indigenous youth, youth of color, and non-binary youth. We need to have programming that reflects shared responsibility for community safety between our local governments, the police, and the community-based organizations. Policing alone can only go so far to address these issues, but the police also have a role to play in building better relationships with youth. There used to be youth basketball games and other things so that youth could see the police as people too and worthy of their trust. The Vancouver Police Department has some good programming that could be used as a model. Second, youth-friendly spaces. Related to the issue of safety, several youth identified the need for more indoor and outdoor spaces to hang out. They pointed out that benches have been removed in some parts of the community. They are asking for better collaboration between recreation centers and youth-serving organizations, offering drop-in centers and youth-oriented programs, sports, athletics, music, arts, and culture. These types of services should be safe for youth, including having trauma-informed staffing with sensitivity to cultural needs. They are also asking for more opportunities for youth to get out into nature and be more physically active, which could help to reduce the problem of addiction to technology, which was definitely worsened by COVID-19. Third, access to better transportation options. There is not enough public transportation, and it doesn't run frequently enough. But youth are still important users of the system. Youth would appreciate free transit services if it were an option. Youth would even more appreciate more frequent buses on key routes and for special events like the Cowichan Exhibition, Light Up, and other festivals. Lastly, consider reinstating the regional grants in aid program to provide supports for community-based organizations and their youth-oriented activities. Thank you. We are open for questions.
Thank you very much to all of the speakers. I was furiously writing down notes. I'm totally with you that recreation centers should, I think local government provides that foundation of programming that should be supporting all levels of our community, particularly youth, and not only just for when they're youth, but to inspire a love of sport, of craft, of art, whatever, for life, and to have those as skills that support mental health throughout life, right? I wanted to just highlight one mini success story that's happening in Shawnigan Lake right now, where there's a community champion, a mom with teenagers that are really struggling with, not feeling safe in the community, all the stuff that you just shared with us, Delphine. And they just have partnered with the Shawnigan Lake Community Center, and last weekend put on a sewing Squishmallows event for teens. And that was the first partnership of just like a local group of moms and the community center. So I would say if you have connections to these community champions, please do send them to our recreation centers, because I know that the staff that we have are eager to partner. We just need to connect the right people. Yes, please. Comment on that.
If I may, Chair. Those incredible mothers actually reached out to Cowichan Valley Youth Services prior to them instigating and asked how we could help. And our answer, unfortunately, was as much as we would love to, and we recognize the gap in youth services, specifically in the Cowichan region, financial capacity remains a challenge. And so while we are connected, I think that is one of the main kind of overarching points here, is that economic times are not becoming any more predictable for nonprofits in the near future. And we really need a radical level of support to enable not just those community champions who are busy being parents, working full time and living their lives, but also community service agencies that have been doing this work for decades to be able to step up to the plate, collaborate with recreation centers, and offer these opportunities to youth. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll look around. I have a good speakers list. I have this computer that tells me. Director Wilson, you're first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Brenda, Zoe, Delphine. What's your major sources of funding, Zoe? Is it purely by donation or is the province involved here?
Thank you, Director Wilson. I can certainly speak to Cowichan Valley Youth Services' main source of funding, but also want to recognize that there was a number of service providers at the table involved in this gap analysis. Currently, Cowichan Valley Youth Services does hold a contract with the Ministry of Children and Families. That contract provides approximately 7,000 counseling hours to youth in the region. Last year alone, we provided more than 13,000 hours and still ran a wait list of anywhere between 1 and 5 months.
And follow up, please, Chair. And talking about affordable housing, I work with the Cowichan Housing Association. Do you have an association with them as well? Can they help you out in any way?
Currently, Cowichan Valley Youth Services is not engaged in any housing support to this time.
Okay, thank you.
Director Justice. There you go.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. I was sort of listening for the word foundry to come up, and I didn't hear it. I know a few years ago there was a big push in this community to get a youth foundry, and unsuccessful. But there's other communities have them, and so is that something that you're currently working toward? And if so, does the regional government have any sort of a advocacy or support role?
We'll let Cindy answer that. I think she's the closest to it.
Hi, everyone.
Lise, welcome.
Cindy Lise, Regional Facilitator for our Cowichan Communities Health Network. There is a dream for a foundry, but what we also have opening within, it may even be open now, is a health clinic center in the new Cowichan Senior Secondary. There's a lot of restrictions and regulations around getting a foundry, including the community's responsibility to build and purchase a multi-million-dollar building. And we made a decision as a collective not to pursue a foundry at the last call because our focus was on getting a youth shelter, which was deemed our #1 priority, which is now open. That doesn't mean that a foundry isn't in the future, but that it was put on hold for other priority needs in the community in hopes that with what we have existing, we'll be able to do some of that work.
Thank you for that.
Follow up? No. Director Deck.
Thank you. Thank you. You talked about the challenges of collaboration. You outlined that very well. But I'm wondering if you are able to link with other agencies to maximize the funds and the resources that you have and the capacity you have to serve youth.
Thank you. I will try to answer that question. I think the gap analysis, the foundry work, first of all, for the last call for foundry, and then the gap analysis work laid a really important foundation for a lot of organizations and institutions and leaders to come together to start thinking kind of collectively about this stuff rather than in their own pockets. That work is continuing through our Cowichan Community Health Network. There will now be a table formed that is going to begin to move this work forward in a cohesive way. And I think the next time there is a call for a foundry, I think maybe this region will be ready to take that on in a much more heightened way.
Yes, I don't know what a foundry is.
I would love an explanation too.
I can speak to that a little bit. Foundry is really a model of a hub, like where it's not just mental health support, but it's that whole holistic view of a young person. And so it brings in physical health, mental health, and really takes that kind of hub model to a whole new level. There are foundries across the province that have been funded. And I also just wanted to add that when that call for the next round of foundry proposals comes, one piece that the CVRD can certainly do is be ready with your pens and your laptops to write letters of support, because that will be of maximum benefit. Currently, Foundry is accessible to youth across the province. I believe it goes up to age 24 in virtual support. And so currently, if there are youth in community who need it, they can access virtual support through Foundry as well.
Thank you.
Director Eustache.
Thank you, Chair. I'm definitely in your previous wheelhouse, Zoe. Is Cowichan Valley Youth Services still working in partner or any collaborative with Take a Hike? And then I have a follow-up question for staff, probably from something from.
Sure. Thank you, Director Eustache. Yes, I've worn many hats during my time in the region. In terms of collaboration specifically with Take a Hike, we have a lot of client crossover. So youth who are in a Take a Hike classroom in the Cowichan region who have access to that registered clinical counselor embedded in the classroom might also access services through Cowichan Valley Youth Services, which I'll call CVYS from now on to save my breath. Would also access our counseling support, perhaps our youth employment mentorship program, and our groups as well. And further to Director Deck's point, there is a beautiful abundance of collaboration, and we are all working to maximize the funds and resources that we have. But across the board, those are significantly limited. Yeah.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, just of seeing the Take a Hike youth out on the mountain, because of course that's where my mental health is as well. So I ran into a group there and know the good work they were doing, and nice to see that any community that needs that support, you can link them with that. I did want to touch on the comment of the transit though, and I can't recall where we are here at the CVRD board table. I'm just trying to remember, so maybe staff can fill me in where we are on our discussions on the youth fee, because right now it's Kitimat, Penticton, Whistler, Sunshine Coast, and Victoria all offer free transit for all students and youth. So I'd really like to push for that in this area, especially as we have the new high school, the campus, and of course, from what we heard from the delegation. So I don't know if it's appropriate, Chair, to ask staff just quickly for comment on that, because of course I don't think our delegation can do that.
Yeah, I've got eye contact with Mr. Elzinga.
Thank you, Chair. Through to the Director. There are two reports coming forward in April. One is around fares and one is around expansion of transit. And so there are certainly challenges with both, but those reports will be presented to the board in April.
Yeah, and I know this table has been advocating for transit expansion since I've been here and before, and we're not receiving that funding from BC Transit. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. You spoke of funding, and everybody speaks of funding, and I was at the VIEA conference, I think it was last year, and I went to the not-for-profits presentation that was put on, and everyone at that session was, identifying serious shortfalls in funding, and traditional funders and senior orders of government had been reducing the amount of funds made available. Where I'm going to is your last ask on the regional grant and aid program, and I was fortunate enough to be here when we were granting, I was going to say doling out, but that's not appropriate. We were granting, in the neighborhood of $500,000 a year. We don't have anywhere near that sort of funding today, but regional grants are not designed for ongoing operations and expenditures. They're more focused on specific events or specific programs or initiatives. So could you give us an idea as to if we were to reinstitute a meaningful regional grant and aid program, what would be the type of grants that you would put in for, and what would be some of the initiatives that we could have an impact if we reinstituted that program?
I will admit my ignorance and also share my curiosity with the restrictions around historical regional grant and aids, knowing that CVRD budgets are made public, and there are in fact many that are grandfathered in from former times that are used for operational funding. So I'll challenge you on that, and you know, to answer your question, Director Morrison, I was just chatting today with a team member about the opportunity to collaborate with regional districts' recreational spaces, and thought about how challenging it is and how many barriers there are for young people to access sport and recreation for numerous reasons: financial, transportation, many of the barriers that we've talked about today. And how wonderful it would be if Cowichan Valley Youth Services, for example, could have funding to provide 1 or 2 counseling staff inside a recreational space to support some kind of sport activity, but also have that therapeutic aspect of the work present and connecting youth to our programs. We actually toured the new health center at the high school this morning and saw the space. And were offered the use of their board meeting room to host an art group for youth. And so that's a wonderful example. Art group is something that we already have in our budget, that we already do, and we are limited by space. So that's a wonderful collaborative endeavor. However, to add additional programming, that would be one example. But I will also share that I think a challenge in the overall philanthropic sector is the restrictive nature of grants. It's wonderful to host events and have one-off projects, but we have to keep the lights on and keep the building open. And so if that were ever back on the table with the CVRD, I would really hope that that could be incorporated into the discussion.
And as a follow-up, great pivot, and I have to completely agree that when we have recreation facilities, and we're now a regional recreation function, and the lights are on, the spaces are heated, absolutely, I think that is an excellent place for a partnership. And I'm going to sort of pivot and challenge my colleagues to think about whether a regional grant and aid program would be something that we would want to include in our next year's budget. And we can talk about what the guidelines and the qualifications are for those. But I think there are opportunities for us to partner with organizations such as yours to provide those spaces and provide opportunities. And I look forward to working with groups like yours in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Definitely regional grant and aid pops up at this table often, related to really supporting fundamental activities happening across our region. Director Staples.
Thank you for the presentation. It's and for all the work that you all do in the community, and also the perspectives that you bring to this table, but also to other places in the community. It's really important what you're bringing to this table in terms of not just consideration for this table, but consideration for us as a community as well, as to how do we look at more creative ways of dealing with our spaces. One of the places, the high school, I know during that process, one of the conversations was around looking at different models of partnering with community organizations to deliver after-school programs at the high school. And at that time, the focus had to be really on the building of the school. And so I'm hoping what I'm hearing is that those conversations are growing and continuing, because kids are already there. It's an incredible space. It's also very close to the community center. So building that after school and before school programming with community partners, I think is an opportunity that should not go be wasted. And there are incredible programs in other countries that have demonstrated the change in youth and in community by offering a place for youth to be after school and activities for them to engage in. And so that is something that if, in any way that that we can advocate, I think, or I can only speak for myself, but any possible advocacy roles in that, I'm happy to provide, because I think it's essential. And again, it is a missed opportunity, and hopefully one that is being worked on. And the question that I have for you is around the youth table that was discussed that was brought up during a presentation. Is that in addition to the youth table that already exists, or is it to formalize in a different way the youth table that is currently operating?
Me again. So for many, many years in this community, there has been a child and youth committee, a youth committee, an early years committee. They've had many iterations over the many, many years. There was, and the name has changed, prior to the pandemic, there was the youth committee that was Cowichan Youth Collective. I can't even remember what we were called. When the pandemic hit and there was all of these efforts underway to house people to prevent the spread of COVID, it became critically evident that our youth were the ones who were left without resources. And so the broader table that was existing got very pointy and very focused, and some of the folks are here with me, to really focus our efforts on advocating for a youth shelter or a youth safe space. And so that broader collaborative table took a pause, and the intention and the focus got very narrow. Now that we have in our community the shelter that is open, we have the health center that is open, we have a new program called ICY, Integrated Child and Youth Teams, that we are now ready to expand our lungs back out into the community. And so on April 1st, we are having a half-day session. There's over 50 community partners who have signed up for a half-day session around really finding how we now move ourselves forward as that broader collective. And within that, what's the now, what, so what? What are the next steps that we have for our community? Number one is relationship building and working together in collaboration, which we do very well. How do we support the existing programs in our community with each other? How do we support the new programs that are under development? And then the now what, so what? And I do believe that the focus is likely going to find its way to supported housing for youth, which is a gap that has been identified immensely that will require all hands on deck to be able to address. There's a lot going on. We welcome you to join the table, connect with me. I know Mayor Staples has said that she would be there, hopefully with us on that day, so there is a representative from this table there. But this is not the end. It is the beginning of many, many more years to come in this iteration of a collaborative.
Thank you. Can I just have a quick follow-up? So thank you for that. That is good to know that that's that reformatting. And I would ask too, from my colleagues, anyone who can attend that, supporting what's happening here today is to hear about what's happening in the region. So that's an excellent opportunity to do that and to see where this table goes and then how we can also support. But we can also report back whoever does attend. And I just want to say to Zoe, I have seen you, I've known you since you were a youth, and I think that you exemplify what happens when your community, when people in your community reach out and support, and it's just incredible to have seen you through all of these years grow into the work that you're doing now. And I just think that, that's an incredible leadership for young people like Delphine and others that you bring to your position and to our community. So thank you.
Director Nicholson.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. I know so little about this area, but I'm gathering through the conversation. I was going to ask what Michelle asked. So now I'm just going to move on to my regional recreation. Because I heard you say we could do more on the recreation programming. And so I guess this question is probably for Mr. Elzinga. Would it be helpful to have this presentation at each of the recreation commissions? Because when we have our recreation commissions, we don't often talk about programming for specific groups like that, and it seems to me that that would be a useful way of, looking at what we do with the recreation commissions. So there's 4 recreation commissions, so would that be onerous to perhaps someone come and do a quick, because I think it would be really helpful. And I think it's really great that we have our Cowichan, because I think that is helpful from a coordinating perspective. And I've seen that change since I started here. That seems to be a really go-to thing. So we don't have regional grant and aids now, but if you send me a note I can send some money to someone to help support a group or whatever, just do that, okay?
Mr. Elzinga, did you want to comment?
I certainly can, through the chair to Director Nixon and the delegation. We would certainly welcome delegation at any of the 4 commissions for the board's information. Those commissions meet every 2 months. So March is completed, and so it would be in May that we would be looking forward to delegation requests, and I could certainly work with the delegation today on those. There has been previous conversations at a commission meeting with Cowichan Valley Youth Services, and we would certainly look to collaborate if we could.
Follow up? Nope. Good. Thank you to the 3 of you, Zoe, Delphine, and Brenda. You can reach out to any of the electoral area directors with a simple email request for grant and aid, and I know our municipal partners have the same thing with their municipalities. And just thank you so much for amplifying youth voice. All right, moving forward to report of the chairperson. Okay, I'm going to give a brief summary of a masterclass I recently took called Cultivating Civility. It's run by Diane Kaelin-Sucre, which I know some of you have read this book. She was the keynote speaker at AVICC last year. It was really, really inspiring. And through the course, I developed a little personalized roadmap around renewing civic culture. So the initiative is grounded in the principles of compassion, civility, accountability, and it aims to address the challenges that we experience around incivility and to foster a thriving local governance environment. I mean, I really do have the optimistic, lofty goal that we have the ability to re-inspire trust in local government within our communities. I think, the current narrative around anything government is not great, but I'm really here to see it be different. So some of the things that I'm committing to is prioritizing my own self-awareness and emotional intelligence, committing to uphold our code of conduct and embody the values of justice and compassion. Around culture, I want to ensure the well-being and human flourishing of our civic culture. And I try to do that by initiating conversations with all the directors around the table, staying in that good relation, as well as leaning in on in-person meetings with my constituents. And that also, I'm going to promote what Diane Kaelin-Sucre talks about as civility circles. So inviting groups within my community to get together and have in-person conversations about the challenges that they face and how I can try to help them and share the challenges that I face right along with them. I'm committed to learning. Obviously, I really am keen to learn about local government and how this game works and how I can advocate for our community the best way. So I want to lead by example, that I'm always learning. And I also I'm working on implementing a self-evaluation tool that'll start with myself and invite others to join me. I know there's Ladysmith is one that has a whole board evaluation something or other that I've looked to for inspiration. But kind of taking off the lead of our CAO, who also took the lead in having herself reviewed when she first started here. I think it just fosters an environment of constructive feedback and continued learning. And then I'm hoping to build unity and public engagement. So I'm really committed to fostering a culture of kindness and collaboration here within the board, but also enhancing public engagement, starting with setting up directors for success with communication tools. So electoral area directors, I believe, used to have great little one-pagers that were kind of little introductions that got emailed out to constituents. And so I'm trying to revive that. And I'm looking to establish some guidelines for all of us to be empowered to run constructive dialogue at public meetings with the intention to bring the public along so that they know how to be involved and heard. And so most recently I've had a conversation with Director Martman about that, who had a pretty hot meeting a couple weeks ago and has provided lots of great learning upon reflection. And I think that will empower us all to be more connected with our communities in a way that fosters good relations. So this course really inspired me to govern with compassion. That's definitely my personality, but it's easy in the grind of day to day to just kind of forget that. So I'm going to continue to cultivate our positive relationships around the table. And if any of this, resonated with you, I highly recommend the course. I can give you some more information on it. That's it for me. Moving on to number 7, correspondence. We have a piece of correspondence from Thomas Bevan with the Island Corridor Foundation for information. Looking around the table if anybody wants to pull that. And number 2, we have a piece of correspondence from Kyle Young, the Director of Planning and Sustainability at the City of Duncan, requesting a letter of support. And we have a recommendation here that the CVRD provide a letter of support to the City of Duncan for a Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund application for the City of Duncan water reservoir replacement and expansion and strategic infrastructure upgrades to support housing supply. Director Morrison's moving that, seconded by Director Abbott. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. We'll send off that letter. Moving on to committee reports, we will start with Director Abbott with the Special Governance Committee meeting. And you're live.
Thank you, Chair. Before you, you'll see the report and recommendation from the Special Governance Committee meeting of December 5th, 2024. I recommend your Governance Committee report and recommend that CVRD Bylaw number 2889, Regional Board Procedures Bylaw 2006, be amended to include provisions for consent agenda, order of meeting agenda business, clarity on meeting delegation management. And 2, that the board policies be developed for correspondence, agenda item management, and for meeting time management. So, speaking quickly to that point, I make that motion.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Director Nicholson. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motions carry. Thank you, Director Abbott. Next up is Director Douglas with the Committee of Whole meeting report from February 26th.
Your Committee of the Whole reports and recommends the board meeting of March 26, 2025, that it be recommended to the board that staff report back to the Electoral Area Services Committee with a report that provides further information options to address South Cowichan community identified issues in the categories of governance, servicing, and jurisdiction as proposed in the Eco Plan report. So I'll move that.
Moved and seconded by Director Istash. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving at lightning speed, we have Director Morrison up next.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of pages of stuff here, so I'm going to try and break it up into hopefully bite-sized pieces, and hopefully, well, it has been published and everybody's read it, so I might move items potentially as a number as a block. In regards to the recommendations from the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting on March the 5th, 2025, these are for all directors, and the recommendation is that we report and recommend as follows, and I'm looking at the grants in aid, C1 through C5, and I would move those items.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Wilson. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carry.
And I'm a little stumped by the next one. Item 7 no longer required. R7 no longer required. So what do you want me to do with that?
Mr. Robbins.
Chair, just skip over that one.
Okay.
Excellent. For electoral area directors from that same meeting, and I would ask if anybody would like any of the following items to be pulled. We have, at this point, R1, R2, R3, R4, and R5.
Director Abbott, you'd like one pulled? Oh, no. Okay.
So I move those items.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carry.
On to CR4 from the meeting of March the 19th, 2025 for electoral, or from the meeting we recommend as follows. We have, I think we'll start with the recommendations C1, C2, R5, and R6. Those are for all directors, and I would move those items.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Alternate Director Champ. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carry.
We have, for electoral area directors only, we have items R1, R1, R12, R2, R3, R4. Would anyone like any of those pulled?
I just need a second with the parliamentarian here.
Okay.
Ms. Breen, do you need to provide clarity on R11 at all, or can we go ahead?
Through the chair, I can just provide a bit of information for the directors
Okay,
if they would like.
Okay, hold that thought. So can we deal with R1.1 on its own? Please, Director Morrison?
Well, certainly, you're the chair.
So you're moving
R11,
that
I would
one?
move that.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Champ. We will go to Ms. Breen. Push your button again. There we go.
Thank
You're
you.
on. Thank you.
R11, which is for referral to the APCs, and also that the directors receive a hard copy of the OCP. And for information for the directors, that hard copy of the OCP is approximately $300 each.
I'm wondering if the board would consider an on as requested. So maybe not all directors need that. Or nobody wants to suggest that? You suggest that? Okay, Director Nicholson, so this is an amendment to the motion. Mr. Robbins, interrupt me if I'm doing anything incorrectly. So to amend, let's see, all directors receive a hard copy as upon request, to insert the words upon request. Moved by Director Nicholson. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Director Wilson. Just checking with Mr. Robbins. That's all good?
And that director's upon request.
Yeah. Oh, Ms. Breen is? Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, what am I?
I think she's flashing. Do you want to say anything?
Nope, don't have it.
Oh, you don't want, she doesn't want to say anything. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Director Deck.
Can it be downloaded?
It's available on the Plan Your Cowichan website right now.
Yes. So, yes, so we can read it there, though.
Yeah, but just some directors would prefer a printed
Hard
copy. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
which is, yeah, fine upon request. Okay, so voting, sorry, more discussion on the amendment. So on the amendment to add the words upon request, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Now the motion as amended, any more discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Back to you,
brings us
Mr.
to R1-2. Does anybody want that one pulled? Or can I just continue?
I think we can continue.
I think we all want the workshop. So R1-2, R2, R3, and R4. I would move those items.
Moved by Director Morrison, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried.
That concludes my lengthy reports.
Thank you. Back to Director Douglas for the recommendations of today's committee, right? Yeah, today's Committee of the Whole meeting.
All right, your Committee of the Whole reports and recommends the board meeting of March 26, 2025, that the CVRD enter into a 5-year 2025 to 2029 Master Services Agreement, including associated statements of work with MMBC Recycling Incorporated, and that the CVRD enter into a 5-year 2025 to 2029 Municipal Type Service Agreement with optional renewal provisions with the Municipality of North Cowichan, Town of Ladysmith, Town of Lake Cowichan, and the City of Duncan for the consideration and transfer services of curbside garbage, recycling, and organic material.
You'd move those?
I'll move those.
Moved by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Abbott. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motions carry. And Director Douglas, one more.
Yeah, one
report.
more. So your Committee of the Whole reports and recommends the board meeting of March 26, 2025, that staff submit a full proposal to the BC Disaster Resiliency and Innovation Fund with the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness in the amount of up to $400,000 for a funding application for tsunami modeling through the Disaster Resiliency and Innovation Fund program, and that the board supports the project and commits to cost overruns. So I'll move that.
Moved by Director Douglas, seconded by Director Morrison. Any discussion? Call, Director Wilson.
There you go. That's an interesting one, actually. Just a comment here. I'm not sure, you're just applying for the funding to be able to do this, right? This disaster mitigation on the tsunami stuff? Just so I'm understanding it, it's just a proposal to apply for the grant.
Yeah, I don't know any more than you.
Oh, okay.
All I know is from
Okay.
what we had this morning at the Committee of the Whole meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Director Nicholson.
I guess on that point, I didn't notice that second part about if there are funding overruns, but I would presume that would hear that we got the grant if we get it, and there would be some sort of process for us to understand whether $400,000 was going to be enough or not before we committed to some unknown cost overrun.
And Mr. Elzinga can speak to that.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Director Nicholson. So the language in the recommendation is a requirement for the grant application. However, staff anticipate no cost overruns and that the entire project would be within that funding amount.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Ready for me to call the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Motions carry. Sorry, back to my agenda here. We are moving on to staff reports. So I just do want to acknowledge that we're at an hour. I'm not going to take a break, Barry. You can get set up. But I just want to share that the chairs got together and had a discussion around just meeting management. And so I just want to make it clear, if anybody needs to use the washroom, get a snack, some water, take care of your own needs. I want you all to feel that you're not trapped here. And we have a few minutes here while we figure out, get our tech set up here for our next presentation. But I'm going to continue on. We'll take an official break at the 2 hour, closer to the 2 hour mark. Mr. O'Riordan, welcome. exciting presentation. Such a hot topic right now.
Yes, thank you. So good afternoon, Chair and Directors. Good to see this new technology in place here. So as you see, the purpose of this report is to provide an update on to the board on the economic development couch in response to the Canada trade dispute with the US. So I have a slideshow, as you can see up here. Let me just make sure it moves. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, as we know, trade tensions between Canada and the US have escalated significantly in recent weeks. President Trump has imposed 25% tariffs on many Canadian goods and 10% on energy, and then Canada has been employing countermeasures. And President Trump paused some of their tariffs on goods until April 2nd, but about 62% of Canadian goods are still affected. So as a result, Canada delayed their second round of countermeasures. And then US has 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum that went into place on March 12th. And there's also measures on softwood lumber. So US tariff announcements have raised concerns, obviously, with Cowichan businesses and businesses across BC and Canada. So as the situation continues to evolve, EDC is committed to keeping businesses updated with the latest information, resources, and support programs. So the US is a significant trading partner, obviously, with Canada, and the tariffs represent a significant and immediate threat to both Canadian and BC businesses and the economy and workers. So before we get into response, it's good to provide a little bit of context on the trade challenges for the region. So the US is the #1 destination for exports for BC as well as Canadian origin, and it's also the primary source of imports into Canada at 49%. Meanwhile, Canada represents only 13.7% of US exports and 12.8% of imports in 2023. Okay, so here we see that exports to the US grew over time, just after the pandemic, as industry and government quickly rebounded. So that also coincides with the last trade agreement with the US, Canada, and Mexico. Things have since cooled, and we're still above pre-pandemic levels in terms of trade. Okay, so this slide is a little bit crazy, but there's some information in your package worth looking at. So this slide just shows that the country of destination for BC goods, and US, you can see here, is by far the biggest destination for exported goods, but that share, we can see, has been decreasing over time marginally in recent years with increased trade to mainland China, Japan, and others. And I'll go pretty quick through these slides here so we can have any discussions. So within Canada, Ontario, Alberta, and Quebec are by far the largest exporters of goods to the US, while BC only represents 5.3% of Canadian trade to the US. So you probably heard it said that BC is less impacted by the trade tariffs. And I think this is the main reason why. Our location gives us better linkages to Asian countries for trade, for example. So then within BC, this chart just shows the top five products of BC exports to the US, which include softwood lumber, natural gas, crude oil, aluminum, and zinc, which represents 34% of the total exports in 2024. And now this table here shows all exports in broader categories. So you see where each one stands. And I won't just get into those details. You have those numbers in front of you. And this is just a representation of the exchange rate over time between the cost of US dollar per each Canadian dollar. So you see after several steady years, the exchange rate around 135. It's recently risen to 1.43 in February, and I think it's about 144 today. So this strong dollar compared to the US may mitigate some of the issues to do with tariffs, because it's cheaper to buy Canadian products with the strength of the US dollar. It could also support, spur some international tourism if the climate is right for that. But of course, with the exchange rate, the US, if they're looking to build their trade with the world, they're obviously going to want a weaker US dollar. So changes in interest rates and a number of factors would affect that. Okay, now some of onto kind of EDC's response so far to the tariffs. So EDC has developed a dedicated resource page on our website, ecdevcouchin.com, named Navigating Tariffs. So that page we're updating regularly and is a central hub providing guidance, explores new market opportunities, and leverage available grants for businesses within the region. So we're promoting this through our social media and our partner organizations within the region. Particular resources maybe worth highlighting amongst those. One is the Export Navigator program. So this program is delivered through Community Futures British Columbia and offers free one-to-one supports for small and medium-sized enterprises to navigate the complexities of international trade. So they have kind of one-on-one trade advisors that can support businesses that are impacted by tariffs. So it's a good one to share if you're talking in community. Another valuable program highlighted by our colleagues at the Ministry of Jobs, Economic and Development and Innovation is the Federal Work-Share program. So that program has special measures due to the tariffs. It enables employers to work to deal with temporary shortages of work. If they're, rather than laying off employees, they can reduce hours by 10 to 60%, and then the employee at the same time can benefit from EI through those programs. That's another good one to promote to businesses in the region. So some additional stuff we've been up to, we did a workforce summit in the region on February 27th, and that workforce summit was not focused on tariffs, but we included a survey on tariffs within the program, and that one part of that coming out of that, some of the identified challenges included for businesses identified were rising costs and inflation, layoffs and employment, reduced discretionary spending from folks, general instability, and difficulty identifying local products. And then potential benefits from the imposed tariffs would be increased focus on buy local from both consumers and businesses within the region, increased trade with non-US partners, as you said, has been increasing in recent years, but also local, provincial, and internationally. And then innovation to drive more production locally and within Canada, supply chain, circular economy, and manufacturing, and then general unity within the greater business community in Canada. So then within kind of more local organizations that are business focused within the region, EDC convened a group with all the BIAs and chambers within the region, as well as Community Futures, Export Navigator, and Work BC to discuss what the region's response to the tariffs currently is and what the opportunities for collaboration between these different organizations would be. So several actions were identified part of those discussions. Different organizations in the region are doing little bits, and we've been working together to go, okay, should we replicate some of that work? Do we need to work together? Do we work individually on different things, and what things are missing? So we're continuing to host those meetings within the region to ensure there's collaboration, ongoing collaboration around the issues of tariffs and collaboration. I lost my mic there. So yeah, we'll continue to monitor this situation with local groups as well as regional and provincial partners, including Export Navigator, Ministry of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovation, Vancouver Island Economic Alliance, Vancouver Island Coast Economic Developers Association, and SIP on the South Island. So staff are also kind of looking to connect with a group of EDOs and ECDEV leaders across the region and the coast to collaborate on initiatives and advocacy. So we're in regular contact and sharing information around potential strategies as the situation evolves. As you know, probably the South Island Prosperity Partnership has got a economic task force coming as a result of the tariffs. So we're also staying connected to that project and any outcomes. I think they're meeting next week, so we're connected in terms of opportunities for potential collaboration with that as well. And then we'll continue to update the board with any activities arising out of a response to tariffs, and I'm available to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There are a few questions. I have a speakers list here. I'll start with Director Martman.
Thank you, and thanks very much for the report and the timing of it. I was just reading that President Trump announced a 25% tariff on all vehicles built outside of the U.S., and that he's referring to April 2nd as Liberation Day. So that's just the latest report, and so it just leads me to think that Canada's going to, and other countries are going to respond, and so we're not at the end of this. This is going to be going on and on, and so I was wondering when I read through your report and listening to you now, if you could comment a little bit more on what you might know regionally for regional numbers, or if there are any regional numbers available, and if you have any particular case studies or examples of a business that you know of that is getting really impacted by this.
Yeah, thank you for the question through the chair. So yeah, the numbers we have regionally, there's not a lot coming out from the province other than what we've shared here today in terms of that overall impact, that share of trade. From the chambers and BIAs, et cetera, we haven't heard a lot in terms of major issues within the region. But as part of, we have heard some, if we've heard of some wood, value-added wood businesses, for example, with 50% of their sales going to the US. So I'm not going to name names in the room, but that's obviously a significant concern for them. It's not something that you can switch on a dime, where it takes years to develop additional trade routes and change those things. So there are definitely impacts, and I think maybe the chambers and BIAs have less representation from the manufacturing and larger scale businesses within the region as well. So we wouldn't get the full story just working with those businesses as well. So we need to look exploring opportunities like, is there a way to collaborate to, do a phone call to all the bigger manufacturing businesses in the region and see what those impacts are directly, because we don't necessarily get that information directly.
Director Eustache.
Thank you, Chair. First, a quick commentary, and I do have a question that was from the stats, and I'm appreciative that Director Martin brought his point up on what is he seeing locally. I'll just speak really quick. As a business owner, employ several people, and I'm in retail, I'm actually shielded. Most retail companies, the way it works is that we won't be paying, even on the reverse Canadian tariffs, we still won't be paying, because typically every company has a Canadian subsidiary, And all of our products ship direct from Asia, South America, India, wherever they're manufactured. They go to a Canadian distribution as a separate company, and that company deals entirely in Canadian funds and trades and then ships direct to Canadian retailers like myself, so we won't be impacted. Where local retailers are being impacted most right now is, honestly, it's the boycotts and the shift in what people are, how they're supporting local, but at the same time, they're not being mindful. And I wrote quite extensively at it, and the Chamber of Commerce shared it locally, was that in retail, we're in a 8-month lead time. For myself, I've bought in all of my product and committed to it way before Trump was elected. I'm through to the end of the year on all my purchases and decisions of what products, what country, what brands. So we're in the pipeline. We can't make decisions. I'm just at the point now where I've had to make the hard decisions, and I did decide not to bring in a US brand, but that's for spring next year. So right now we're feeling good and we're feeling okay. And then the big shift, though, the immediate threat, though, is local choices to support Canadian only, which is actually to a detriment to Canadian businesses because they're locked into that inventory. They've outlaid the cash already. So it'll be different than what has retailers, how they've shifted in this coming fall. With that, as a retailer too, though, we're not going to see the impacts that Mr. Reardon spoke of, whereas then me, my biggest worry as a retailer is discretionary spending. And the discretionary spending being in North Cowichan and the Cowichan Valley is resource, value added, manufacturing, all that. We won't see those effects till the fall. And then that's when the local retailers, I think, will see a significant reduce in spending and income in their businesses, because I think that's when the impacts of tariffs are going to be seen in the forestry industry and the manufacturing industry. So I think there's going to be a delay. There's like an earthquake under the ocean right now, and we don't know if we're going to have a tsunami. So we're there, we're mindful of it. So just as a local retailer, I wanted to share that perception of what are we seeing out there. It's actually really good. Locals have been amazing and they're doing good. The biggest threat in the room, honestly, is still Amazon, though. Like, honestly, to local retailers, Amazon's terrible. So to that. So then my question, Chair, sorry to belabor that. I just wanted to share personal insight at the local Chamber of Commerce level. But my question was, you spoke to how we've been decreasing trade with the U.S. Is it representative, and then I saw where the growth was, is it because of the Pan-Pacific Agreement? And seeing those stronger ties with Asia and those new trade agreements, is that why we've seen, because I saw Korea was up, China was up, and all through there, all the trade was gradually going up every year. So do we think it was because of the Pan-Pacific agreements? And as you said, we're a coastal area, and it was also nice to see on that report that Victoria and Vancouver are the going to be the least affected in Canada if things do get worse. But just curious if you saw data on it being the Pan-Pacific Agreement.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything concrete on that, but I think some of the notes were, one was inflation would have boosted those numbers, which is not great. But when I looked at it, it also coincided with I think that agreement came into place July 2021. So it could have been that wasn't such a great deal that it was proposed to be back then. So that's an impact. And then I think also with sanctions, with the wars that are going on around the world, there was sanctions in place with Russia. So there was an increase in sales from that in terms of energy. So those were things that were highlighted around that.
Good. Thank you.
And just to add, I think there's total alignment with what you're saying, that the view when we had that group together was support the local business, don't be thinking so much about the product. Let the business think about the product and you support the local business.
Mm-hmm. Good message. I have Director Justice Douglas, then McClinton.
Thank you. I remembered not to push the button. Just as a comment, I think that the role you're taking on, providing information, resources, and programs like Workshare to local businesses is potentially very important. What I would like to know is whether you're embedding any evaluation mechanisms into the work that you're doing, so that in the end we can document and understand how if and how the efforts that you're making actually do have an effect on local businesses. Are you thinking about that?
That is not something we had thought about right now. Right now is what can we do? What are resources? What can we put out there? We don't know where any of this is going, how long it's going to be. I think that's our initial focus, but it's something definitely we can consider. How do we measure that impact as well? Thank you.
Director Douglas.
Yeah, Chair, through you to Mr. O'Riordan. Mr. O'Riordan, you mentioned the Export Navigator program. I'm wondering if you could explain to us how any of our local businesses concerned about the impacts of the U.S. tariffs on their exports can access that service. Would it be reaching out directly to the Navigator or through our local Community Futures office or through your team, or can all of the above?
Through the chair. Oh, excuse me. That's Export Navigator right there. Apologies. Through the chair, thanks for the question. Yeah, so on the Economic Development Cowichan website, there's we've kind of prioritized the resources on the tariff resource page for grants that are available to businesses and opportunities. So Export Navigator's right at the top there. And there's a direct email that goes to Brady, who's supporting the whole South Island area. So I'm sure that information's available through Community Futures also, but it's on in our website directly to link folks to.
Or is it just, it's okay then to share that email?
Yeah,
local
share that out.
Just
Yeah, share that out, and they can reach out directly, and they can provide one-on-one support.
Great, thanks.
And I think the province also, Small Business BC folded late last year, and the province recently started up a business advisor. I think they have like 2 staff total. So there's also business advisors available through the province to support folks as well. I'm not sure how resourced it is, but there are a couple of folks there.
All right, thank you.
Director McClinton.
Thank you, Chair. A few comments before maybe a question, and maybe you can help out with. I don't know about you, the rest of the board. I've been anger watching YouTube videos of Thou Shall Not Be Named, and just, but I also think it's important, really, like that. It's just a reflection, a large part of that person, and just a reminder that many Americans are great people. I spent 5 summers working down when going to university, each summer's down in the States, and wonderful people. I know in the governor of Colorado actually raised the flag on March 15th, the Canadian flag, and named it Canadian Friendship Day. So we've got a lot of advocates down in the States, and but nevertheless, we're in the situation we're in. I think back to like the 60s and the auto pack, and Canadians were making one version of a car and Americans were making another version of a car. They had the same name, but they were 2 totally different cars, and it was ridiculous. And we had a thriving auto industry, and we just said, well, let's get together with our best friends. And the other thing I think about is the Avro air company, thriving industry, 30,000 employees. We probably would have put a man on the moon, and then threw in again with the Americans for NORAD, and dismantled that program. So certainly these trade wars really bother me, just because we've sacrificed a lot to appease a lot of American requests. But I do think about the fact, like as I run an agency, having one big client and a bunch of little ones. I mean, that's on us a little bit, and I'm learning more and more about our provincial lack of free trade provincially. And I know this goes back to our federation. When Ontario and Quebec were wanted to form, that was really, we had to give. The provinces wanted a lot of control, and rightfully so, but fast forward 2025, I think that is really something that we can do as Canadians, is break down those barriers, coast to coast. And it's wild, some of the things, like how truckers can't, even drive across the country because of the different regulations. Yeah, and there's so much more. So I'm to my point, to my question. I know we've got FCM coming up and UBCM. Can we put a resolution forward? Can we link up with some other local governments to just really just throw our support behind, free trade across Canada? I think that would be a sort of just putting more support into the momentum that idea has. So can you maybe speak to the possibility of that? And yeah, I think that's my question. Thank you.
I'd maybe redirect that question to anyone else who wants to take it.
Yeah, I feel like we don't do FCM resolutions, do we? No. Where did those come from? The FCM
ABICC.
executive?
Usually provincial associations.
Oh, provincial. Oh, from UBCM to FCM.
Start with the
AVICC, which is a bit late. Yeah. But then it goes to you. So it would be next year's FCM that it would have an impact. Yeah.
I think that just to, maybe if staff heard, if there's anything that we can do to support, that'd be great. I know a lot of us are going to FCM. Mayor Staples has the same birthday as Carney, so if he's still the prime minister and they get a meeting, maybe you can bring me along and we can have a meeting with him and promote it. But yeah, I just think, let's, just if we take it under advisement, I think that's enough for now. Thank you.
One thing maybe to add, the Export Navigator program is out there to support trade anywhere outside of BC. So I think there's an acknowledgement with this that interprovincial trade, there's a lot of opportunity to develop that, as well as opportunities between other countries that aren't the US. But any companies looking to export even outside of Vancouver Island could get support through that program, so it's worth looking at.
Director Morrison, you haven't spoken on this topic yet, have you? Okay, I'm going to go to you first and then Director Douglas, round two.
So given sort of the lateness of the hour in regards to, any initiatives for FCM, we actually do have a great couple of opportunities coming up in that ABICC is just next month, and we've got a report that our staff have put together on some of the things that we are doing. And in my view, I think the way for us to move forward and have impact is we can go to ABICC and we can talk up the work that we're doing, and we can familiarize and develop our skills on the messages that we're bringing forward. And simply as free trade, we want to see interprovincial free trade. We want to see the barriers come down. There's stories all across the province of wine producers in Ontario that can't sell their wine into the Maritimes. So if we're wise, I think we take the information that have been provided by our skilled staff, we internalize it, and we work on these concepts and ideas when we're networking at AVICC. And then Director Martman has suggested that we, those that are attending FCM, caucus in advance and discuss the ideas that we want to bring forward. And if we're in different sessions, we have this information at hand, we can not only present what we as a regional district are doing, and remember, regional districts are strange animals on the federal scene because we're the only ones in the country that are regional districts. But we can bring that information forward and listen and bring back some of the great ideas that are happening in other parts of the country. So great opportunity. Glad you brought this up. And I think that those of us that are going to FCM and AVICC should be working together on honing our message and then bringing it forward on the federal scene.
Thank you. Sorry, Director Douglas, some new first-time speakers. Director Staples.
I won't take up too much, just thinking of this, like it may be something though that we want to start advocating for as these things come up, like right now talking about this interprovincial trade and writing letters as advocating, because things are changing so rapidly that by the time we get to AVICC in a month, let alone FCM, in a few months, things could be in such significantly different places. So I feel like that's something that we can start to make that motion happen, and then see where we're at when we get to those conferences with emergency motions on the floor with other areas. Might just be a way to try to address some of this in real time.
Thanks. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, and apart from the goods aspect of interprovincial trade, I think we also need to start taking down some of the barriers between the trades or the professions that exist between the provinces as well. There's an awful lot of barriers there which stop the free movement of people who want to move around. That's another barrier that I think we should look at as well.
Director Douglas.
Yeah, just a quick point with regards to the advocacy. We can certainly take advantage of AVICC and UBCM and FCM. Sorry, I hate using all these acronyms. I'm sure there's members of the public who have no idea what I'm talking about right now. Yeah, what am I talking about? Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Union of BC Municipalities, and the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities. So we certainly got those avenues, but we also have 3 MLAs within the Cowichan Valley Regional District. We've got 2 federal ridings, and we might have the same members of parliament or different ones depending on the outcome of the election. My experience working with our MPs and MLAs that they are keen to hear from local government municipal leaders about our priorities. So we can certainly bring it up with them and indicate that these are topics of interest to us, and look to them to be our voice either in the provincial legislature or the federal parliament.
Thank you. Oh, Director McClinton. To close, maybe.
One final comment. I also think we should lobby the Prime Minister to get the King to open Parliament when it sits again after the election. I think that'd send a strong message.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. O'Riordan.
Thank you.
For the update. Okay, our second report from the Finance Division. Is this Ms. Bowen? Welcome. From our notice of motion.
So, I don't have anything fancy like Barry. Sorry. We just have the report in front of you, just talking about what the CVRD is doing, and locally within the constraints of our procurement policy. We do put local first, as we stated in there. We do, as you can see, we don't buy a lot from the States. Like some of our bigger contracts might be from the States, but a lot of our products are Canadian, and we are one of the bigger purchasers in the Valley for a lot of companies. So we want to make sure that we are still taking care of our people and that we're not boycotting anybody. I do have to make sure that I ensure that I have best value and that we put the taxpayers' dollars first and make sure that we're not overspending and stuff like that. So we are doing our best.
Wonderful.
And I do have Melody, our procurement officer, online if you have any questions that I may not be able to answer.
It was a great, thorough report, and I'll start with Director Abbott.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Bowen, and your team for putting this together. It was the cause du jour several weeks ago, and with somebody making changes to his mind, like some people change their underwear, I think you're in good hands. I did put in that motion that besides not shopping in the U.S., other impacted countries, just I know, and we can trust that it's not a revelation to your department. You'll do everything you have, and thank you for taking the time to amuse my interests.
To the chair, to Director Abbott, Melody did a fantastic job on doing this report for everybody, and yeah, she is on top of everything. There's always seems to be meetings every week and all these, and she's going to everything, trying to figure out it all and keeping us apprised of what's happening. And it's a moving target for all of us right now. We don't know what's happening out there, and we're doing the best to stay on top of it and ensure we get everything that we have.
We just need to hope they're not going to tariff our garbage. Director Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Tracy. Can you, I'm looking at the bit administrative considerations and departments through invitational competition. do we have a list of approved suppliers that we go to? Or let's say, for instance, a construction project. Do we say, okay, we've used these people before, we'll go to them only? Or is there a list of companies that you would go to?
I'm going to send this one over to Melody because I don't believe that we do have a list of actual vendors that we go to because of the RFP process, but I will let Melody answer that one.
All right, it's my first one, so I'm not very sure about the procedure, but I'm just going to address the question directly to Mr. Director. So my straight answer is no, because the definition of construction is very different. So if you consider water main underground repairment, it's construction. If you considering HVAC installation is construction. So it may be hard to have a roster of pre-qualified vendor list for all the different categories of construction. But I can answer you on this question. For open competition or the regular, let's say water main, the standard services the regional district offers to the citizens. There are, the CVRD has very, attracts interest from pretty much similar vendors. For example, there are certain local construction general contractors, they bid on our projects quite often. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm more concerned about preferential treatment and making sure that as many vendors as possible get the chance to actually, rather than just by invitation. Okay, you can bid on this, and if they don't know about it, they can't bid on it. That's my biggest concern, I think. Thank you.
Director Nicholson.
Code of conduct.
All right. This has made me wonder if we could, about our policy and whether, I think we've talked a lot about promoting farming, local agricultural production, and I'm wondering if we could add to the best value thing something about buying local agriculture products when we do catering and that kind of thing.
Through the chair to.
Do I need a motion to?
No, because the procurement policy is something that Melody and I have discussed, that there are some tweaks that need to be made to it. So that is one thing that we can add to it when we do our tweaks. So we can put in there something about buying local agricultural, making sure that we buy food that is grown here.
Yeah, that would be
for
great.
our stuff. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Great question. Director Istash.
I guess thank you, Chair. The latitude we have as a board, though, is also to get very specific in here. And I just want to pose it to the board, like, what is the board's feeling on using Amazon? 100% solely owned American company that is against Canadian values. Other areas have done that. So even as simply as you say, like, can we use Staples? Because there's a lot of discretion. That's just, if it's in the budget, it's operational expense. Someone needs a stack of paper and pens and everything, they hop on Amazon and they order it rather than using Ulink or Staples or all that. So I was just curious in here, did we look at how much people are just not thinking and just ordering from Amazon? It's a very political question, so I don't know if it's more for the board to talk or to staff to talk on that.
Well, through the chair to Director Istash, I will try. We do, like, I can talk about the finance division. We do search prices and try for the best value everywhere that we can. We have found some things that are like 50% higher buying by Staples than buying from another company. But we have decided to not buy Amazon, that we will buy local. And we will buy here. So we have already made that choice. We've already discussed with staff at SMT that we will not be buying from Amazon, that we will be going back. But we also have to weigh that cost benefit as well, is that we're not going way over price on things as well.
I thought that was a pretty good answer. Are you okay with that? Director Stash, yeah? Director Morrison.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased that Melody's been participating in the BC Social Procurement Initiative meetings and the likes, and they're doing a lot of good work on this front. And I've also been participating in calls, Zoom calls across the country where different organizations are using very innovative approaches to this. But I read this. God, I think I'm becoming a procurement geek, but I read through this with fascination, and there's not a lot of flexibility that we have, and quite frankly, just in sitting and listening, this is very operational and perspective, but the idea of the lowest bid. And yes, we want best value for our taxpayers, but is there latitude in policy for the board to say that, we would want our procurement folks to, be within 10% of lowest bid if there's a local option? Is there latitude for us to ensure that we're getting as close to not only our Canadian or local owned and operated businesses, but those that are using Canadian produced and sourced products? So that's my question, is there latitude within our policy to give a broad direction that we don't have to be lowest bid? And that's, of course, if we all chose that. But is there latitude for us to develop that or put that into a policy that gave staff more flexibility?
I'm going to let the procurement manager deal with that one because I think there's some rules and regulations in the law.
True.
Thank you. Through the chair to the director, I just attended the BCSPI by Social Canada meeting this morning, and the topic today was specifically regarding the flexibility that aligns with your procurement policy. So I can confidently answer you, Director Morrison. The answer is a yes, while aligned with procurement policy, and we need to disclose it in the tendering process. We need to clearly declare that the CVRD will weigh in social value, and if it's a local vendor, and then we will give the local vendor a 10% discount in their pricing if that they are still, considering that 10%, there are mechanisms to incorporate those criteria, social criteria, into our RFP or our tendering process. But there was a lawyer from Civic Legal today in the meeting. She pointed out 3 layers of legal consideration. First one is trade agreement, the threshold as the fundamental. Second, there's procurement law. And then their third one is tendering law. So there are laws in this area that we probably want to consult a little bit further with legal if we really want to incorporate that those clauses into our procurement policy and then into our procurement processes.
So just as a follow-up, if I don't want to put a motion on the floor at this point, but I think that it's worth it to have a discussion as to whether or not we would want to provide that local benefit and consider like a premium to the local owned, operated, sourced company that is providing goods and services to the organization. And so I'm kind of looking to staff as to, would you want to take that as just direction to staff to come back with something? Or, so I see Mr. Postings coming up to the microphone, because I would be interested in having a bit more information and being able to couch a motion that would work for our purchasing and procurement people.
So we're not going to encourage motions on the fly, but potentially it's good notice of motion material, but I'll go to Mr. Postings.
Through the chair to the director, what I would recommend is, if the board wishes for a motion or a resolution to be put forward at some point in time, and we can come back with a staff report with those options. So yeah, if it would be clearer for us if we understood what the board was wishing, and then we come back with a report on that.
So you can come forward with a notice of motion. Thanks, Director Morrison. Back to Director Istash to close.
Thank you, Director Morrison. Great idea. I just wanted to add personal experience with that. When I was on council in Saskatchewan, our city council had a policy, and interestingly enough, the number was 10%. It was done, went through the legalese, but we didn't have to take low bidder. If it was a local bidder, they got a 10% correction in there that they didn't need to be low bid, and for social values, we could support our local community over an outside bidder. So I'd be happy to second that if that does come back to the board.
Thank you. So this was a for information report. Thank you so much, Ms. Bowen and Ms. Liu. I just want to check in with Mr. Robbins. I don't see director's report as a section. When do I do that?
We skipped over it.
Oh.
Section 10.
Oh, it was there. It was hidden. Okay. Then before we go to our bylaw, I'm going to backtrack to number 10, Director's Report. Director McClinton, tell us all about LGLA.
So my daughter does. Chuck. She's only 5. Well, actually, that reminds me, I liked your comment about the civility circles, and if you're accepting children, I've got 3 that we can, that I think would be perfect fit. Clearly, it's getting towards the end of our meeting. Yeah, just wanted to comment on the LGLA, the leadership conference. It was good. It was really good, and was glad I got an opportunity to do that. One of the, I think we all have been to these sorts of events. One of the biggest takeaways is the people you meet from other parts of the province. And there was one guy who was from McBride, which is where my family's from. And I said, "Oh, do you know any McClintons?" He goes, "McClintons? Is your Uncle Len? I worked for him for 20 years. And so in the forestry and rail, and led into all sorts of conversations about what other local governments are dealing with around the province, which is just always helps to frame the work we're doing here. One of the other big takeaways before a few specifics is local government officials and the employees just care so much about their communities and the work they do, often coming at it from different angles, but it's just, you can just see like the people that are sitting in that room really care and are there to learn and take away what they can. Some of the more specific things that I took away, be nice to your CAO and be nice to staff. It really matters, not only for their day-to-day work, but if people move on and you need to recruit people to your area, they're paying attention to what the things that we're saying here at the board table and how we treat staff. Are we throwing them under the bus? That kind of thing. It's hard to find reasons to throw our staff under the bus, but it's just a good reminder. I don't want to use the incorrect terminology, but I just want to get to the point that there was somebody from a Kelowna Nation and just talking about interacting with First Nations, which is a phrase that I, may be embarrassed to not know, but kind of a big takeaway was meet with them more than 50% of the, go more than 50% of the way, more than 50% of the time. And it's just as the nations or different First Nations groups are organizing, they're almost more like mini countries rather than like local governments, and they're just dealing with so many different things. And we can send stuff to them, and it's just like email 1,500 and that they've got to, and you really have to just be consistent and build those relationships. Like it's all about the relationships and that one-on-one. So those are some big things for me, big takeaways. The last couple points, we're doing a really good job here at the CVRD. Listening to some of the other directors and leaders talking about the planning that they need to do and the reporting and how important that is to like get that stuff started and worked on, and just how much of that stuff we already have in place. It's just a testament to the work that's been going on here for a long time and continues to happen. The one last thing that I also thought was neat, there was a lot to talk about official community plans and public engagement. There's a really interesting lawyer that spoke, and the big takeaway there was really for public engagement, it's what we want it to be. There's really the province has been pretty clear on that, whether we have public input or not, or more public input, that's really at the discretion of the board. So I thought those are some interesting things. Yeah, and lastly, if you want to have a good time when you're at an event like this, just find Tech Manhas and he'll hook you up. But other than that, it was a fantastic event. It was great to have a little bit of time to talk with our chair a bit more, and Mayor Staples was there as well. So yeah, great event, and thanks for letting me go. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Director McClinton. Okay, we have one bylaw. I'll quickly read it. That the CVRD bylaw number 4627, Mill Spring Sewer System Service Amendment Boundary Extension Bylaw 2025 be adopted. Moved by Director Abbott, seconded by Director Morrison. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. Mr. Robbins, we can move right to question period, right? All right. Ms. Bernard, you know the drill. Welcome. Let me get my notepad.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity and the privilege to ask a question. I was very excited to see the delegation at today's meeting. My question will connect the dots between our delegation and the wonderful report by Economic Development Cowichan. And I'm wondering, on the current status of the youth with Economic Development Cowichan, whether they're growing incubators in terms of entrepreneurship. I'll reference language in the report that called for innovation in manufacturing, supply chain, and circular economy. So, for example, taking waste products and turning them, upcycling them into other things. And specifically with regard to even just tech skills. So how are we partnering youth with local businesses, or, leveraging that tech mentoring going both ways so that they can have a positive impact locally? And lastly, I guess, just how is the CVRD leveraging youth with strategic objective 5 of the CVRD corporate strategic plan to increase the levels of economic resiliency, security, and prosperity for residents of the Cowichan region? So big question, may take a long time to unpack, and I don't expect an instant answer. Thank you.
Thank you for not expecting an instant answer, because most of those I'll have to check in with ECDEV and I can report back to you.
Yeah.
But regarding the strategic objective number 5, our livelihoods, we actually had a little strategic plan workshop last week, and this one specifically was talked about a lot, and it's really on our mind. So great minds think alike.
And just as a follow-up question, I'm just wondering, for all of the people sitting around the table and in the room today, do you have a youth-focused committee that you are running your decisions past, or at least building awareness of what the topics of the day are?
I'll say not that I'm aware of, but I'll survey and see if anybody else does.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you.
I hear there's some kids that are lining up to be advisors, or perhaps with a civility masterclass, which I also just want to reflect that that's awesome, and you can sign up to that particular podcast.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Aitaka.
Okay, Mr. Robbins, I'm going to go to you to read the closed session, important things, and then we will take a break. Thank you, everyone, for slogging through 2 hours. We got a lot done.
A motion that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with the Community Charter, Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, subsections as noted in accordance with each agenda item as listed in your agenda. There's a move.
Say the specific ones.
I was just saying that they're listed in the agenda. I can certainly name them. But they are
Moved by
listed.
Director Morrison, seconded by Director Douglas. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We are closed. We'll take 10 minutes.